Throwaway because my family uses Reddit. I'm 35 years old and my husband is 37. We've been married for 5.5 years and have an 18-month-old daughter. Overall, our relationship has been good, but for over 3 years now, we've had two ongoing issues that seem to have no solution. The first issue is related to household chores. I work full time, pay 85% of our bills, and do almost everything related to the house. I cook, clean, do the shopping, wash the clothes, and take care of everything involved in maintaining the home. My husband also works full time, but when he gets home, he takes off his work clothes, throws them on the couch in the living room, and heads to the family room to watch YouTube. I've asked for help many times, but he always gives me excuses, and I never get a concrete response. The second issue is more intimate. My husband has a small pornography addiction, and he also suffers from premature ejaculation, which is already a delicate topic, but it's not the main problem right now. A week and a half ago, things got even more complicated. I was rushing around to prepare for the holidays. I was cleaning the house, washing the guest room sheets, cleaning the refrigerator, doing all those things that you need to do when hosting family for Thanksgiving. On top of that, I kept up with my daily tasks. For example, I woke up early to make sure my husband's, my daughter's, and my own lunch boxes were ready, that my daughter was dressed for daycare, that my work bag was prepared, and then I would leave for work. After work, I'd pick up my little one from daycare, often taking work calls on the way. After that, I had to run errands, grocery shopping, Costco, pharmacy, etc. Get home, breastfeed the baby, start making dinner so we could eat when he arrived, bathe the baby, let her play while I cleaned the table, wash the dishes, cleaned the kitchen, tidied up the house, fed her again, put her to sleep, and finally, I'd take a shower myself. These were daily tasks, but I didn't stop until 9 or 10 p.m. Last week, tired, I asked for help again, but he told me he needed a break because he was exhausted. I responded that I was also tired and that if he couldn't contribute financially with half, at least he could help with the cleaning. He closed off and gave me the silent treatment for 2 days. Then he asked if I wanted to go with him and the baby to his mother's house. I told him I would only go if he wasn't going to ignore me the entire time. That was the spark that lit the fuse. He exploded. He said that the only thing I had done in the last 3 years was complain, that he hated cleaning and wasn't going to do it, and that if contributing so much was so important to me, then we should divorce. I asked him to explain what that meant to him. He said, I'll find an apartment, sign the house in your name, refinance it in your name. We'll share custody 50-50 and also split the baby's expenses. Then he left the house and went to his mother's until 1 a.m. Once again, he gave me the silent treatment for 2 days. The other day, I asked him how his search for an apartment was going, and he said, "What?" I told him that I thought he was right, that I had been complaining for 3 years, that I felt miserable, and that he wasn't helping me improve my life. I agreed that divorce was the best option, that I would rather separate as friends and be good co-parents than stay trapped in a toxic marriage. He stared at me and responded, "I only said that to scare you into shutting up." Basically, he tried to manipulate me emotionally to get what he wanted. As someone who grew up in a toxic and abusive environment, that completely shut me down emotionally. I look at him now and feel nothing for him. Now he's trying to win me over, bringing flowers, chocolates, and everything he does just makes me angrier. I need advice. Is it valid for me to want to end all this because he tried to manipulate me and admitted it? I have to be honest, I'm tempted to ruin Thanksgiving. I don't know if I'm just reacting out of anger or if I've really reached my limit. Update 1.
Hello, everyone.
First of all, I want to deeply thank you all for the support and the wise words you've left me in the comments. They've been a light in the middle of the storm, and they've given me the courage I needed to face this situation with more clarity. Every message has shown me that I'm not alone, and that has been one of the things that has helped me the most. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Now, after thinking it over a lot, I finally made an important decision and gathered the courage to have a serious conversation with my husband. I knew I had to do it because otherwise I would continue wasting my time and energy. I had been ignoring my feelings for so long, thinking things would resolve themselves, but I was wrong. Things don't resolve themselves, especially in a relationship where one party simply isn't willing to put in the effort. So, I called him to talk. I didn't beat around the bush. I expressed everything I was feeling. I told him that the emotional manipulation I'd experienced over the past few months, especially after that divorce threat he made and then denied as just a method to scare me, was something I was no longer willing to tolerate. I made it clear that this wasn't only harmful to me, but it was also affecting our daughter. I looked him in the eye and explained how I felt completely alone in this relationship, how the household responsibilities, taking care of our daughter, and work pressures were consuming me. I reminded him that it wasn't just the lack of help around the house that was affecting me, but the way he had been treating me emotionally. It hurt me deeply to tell him that I no longer felt loved or respected. I explained that what hurt the most was that no matter how many times I asked for help, his responses were always evasive or he simply ignored me. I told him that I couldn't keep living like this anymore. Then, I gave him a clear ultimatum. Either he started to change and showed with actions that he was willing to take his part in the relationship and in the family, or I would start preparing to take the next steps in a separation process. I made it clear that I wasn't taking this decision lightly, but that I wasn't willing to continue in a relationship that was draining me, where my needs weren't being heard or respected. It was hard, I can't lie. There was a lot of silence at that moment, and his reaction wasn't easy to process. At first, he became very defensive and started justifying his actions, which I knew would happen. But the important thing is that I said it. I said it out loud, and I wasn't scared off at all. I was tired of living in limbo, not knowing if I was making the right decision, but the mere act of vocalizing it gave me a sense of relief. I felt like I was at least taking control of my life, something I had lost for a long time. After that conversation, things didn't magically resolve themselves as I expected. I knew they wouldn't. But I felt relieved, like I had taken the first step towards something healthier for me and my daughter. A few hours after our talk, he started bringing me flowers, chocolates, and telling me he wanted to fix things. But honestly, those gestures didn't reach me at all. Instead, they made me feel even more frustrated. It was like he was trying to buy me rather than taking real responsibility. I decided not to be swayed by those superficial gestures. It was time to be pragmatic. So, on my part, I started researching legal procedures, custody of our daughter, and the steps I needed to follow if I really decided that divorce was the only way forward. I don't want this to sound cold, but I know I need to be prepared. I want to know my rights, and I want to make sure my daughter is okay no matter what happens. Today, after everything, I feel stronger. I know the situation isn't going to resolve overnight, and maybe it won't resolve at all. But what I do know is that I don't feel trapped anymore. I'm clear on what I need, what I want, and what I deserve. This is the decision I've made, and I will move forward whatever happens. Update 2. It's been a week since my first update, and I want to sincerely thank all of you for your support. Every message and word of encouragement has given me the strength to keep moving forward. It's been incredibly comforting to know that I'm not alone in this process. Thank you to everyone who commented. You've really helped me stay strong. Now, as for what has happened after the conversation with my husband, as I expected, things weren't as easy as I had hoped. After I gave him the ultimatum, he initially reacted with a mix of anger, confusion, and of course, attempts to make peace in a superficial way. It was quite a predictable cycle, and I'm not sure whether I should be surprised or not. But here I am, trying to stay rational amidst the emotional whirlwind I'm living through. The first thing he did was bring me flowers, not just once, but twice. After our first conversation, where I made everything clear, he showed up with a bouquet of flowers, chocolates, and words of regret. In his message, he said things like, "I love you, I don't want to lose you, and I'll change, I promise, just give me one more chance." At first, I felt a mix of relief and frustration. Relief because I thought maybe finally he had hit rock bottom and would now understand the magnitude of what was going on, but frustration because everything seemed so superficial, so empty. Don't get me wrong, I know romantic gestures are how some people try to show their remorse, but I'm not a child anymore. I've been adult enough to know that words and sweet gestures are not enough when what's really needed is concrete actions. Flowers and chocolates don't change what I've lived through in the past 3 years. So, while I thanked him at the time, politely of course, deep inside, I felt that those actions wouldn't change anything unless there was a real transformation in his behavior. So, I decided to ask for more. I asked him not to stay in the realm of empty promises, but for us to move from words to actions. I explained that I wouldn't accept any more excuses. I needed to see that he was willing to share the load of the household. I asked him to commit to consistently helping with the household chores, cooking, cleaning, getting involved in our daughter's daily routines. I told him that I couldn't keep being the only one taking care of all that while he came home and completely disconnected from reality. I also made it clear that I needed a more equitable contribution financially, because, as I mentioned before, I've been carrying the bulk of the economic burden. His response, as expected, was somewhat evasive. At first, he tried to stick to his love story and promises, but when I started to put specific conditions on him, I saw his attitude begin to shift. He started giving me vague responses like, "Yes, I'll try to do it," or "I'll do it, but I can't promise I'll be perfect." At first, I tried not to be too harsh, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that his responses were just a way of avoiding the real issue. That's when his attitude started to become more defensive. He completely shut down, began avoiding the conversation about how he would change things at home, and his responses became more curt. His tone of voice turned cold, and there were moments when he simply ignored me when the topic came up. I realized that he was starting to retreat, showing his true colors as someone who wasn't willing to change seriously, but just wanted everything to go back to normal without making any real effort. It was a hard blow for me because despite everything, there was a small part of me that wanted to believe there could be some kind of reconciliation. But seeing his evasive attitude, that hope started to fade. He isn't willing to face things, and what he's indirectly telling me is that he isn't willing to make the necessary effort to improve our relationship. It's as if he expects everything to resolve itself magically, without changing a thing about his behavior. As for my own actions, I decided not to just sit back. Despite everything he's doing, I know I need to be prepared for the worst. I've started researching more about the divorce process and custody of our daughter. I'm talking to a lawyer to better understand my legal options and the best ways to protect my daughter, because that's what matters most to me right now. I want to make sure that no matter what happens, she will be okay and that I can make decisions that bring me peace, regardless of what he does or says. The truth is, I'm watching his every action much more carefully now. I'm not going to let him distract me with empty promises or small gestures. What I need are real commitments. I've made it clear that there's no room for more emotional manipulation, no matter what he does to try to win me back. He's shown me enough to know that words are just that, words. And words don't build healthy relationships or solid foundations for the future. So, in summary, I'm still observing his actions and behaviors. Flowers and chocolates aren't going to distract me from what really matters. I need to see his willingness to change for real. I haven't made a final decision yet, but what I do know is that I'm going to keep fighting for my happiness and my daughter's stability, and I'm not going to stay in a situation where only I'm giving 100%. Update 3. A couple of weeks have passed since my last update, and I feel it's time to share some significant progress in my life. As many of you already know, I made a difficult and painful decision to continue with the separation process. It wasn't something I took lightly, but after witnessing his unwillingness to change and the constant empty promises, I knew I had no other choice. Now I can say with certainty that I've begun a new chapter in my life, and although it's still a path full of uncertainties, I feel an inner peace that I had lost for a long time. Since I made the decision to step away, my focus has completely shifted. The first step was to start planning my future more independently. I began by organizing my finances, something I knew I had to do if I wanted to feel at ease. I spoke with a financial advisor and started creating a budget that would fit both my needs and my daughter's. It was a tough task, but at the same time, liberating. Knowing that I can control my finances gave me a great sense of autonomy, something I had lost over the past few years. Next, I focused on seeking emotional support. I could no longer carry everything alone, so I decided to get closer to my family and close friends. I've been surprised by how much they've been there for me. Every call, every conversation with them has given me the strength I needed to keep going. I've learned to ask for help, and above all, to accept it. There's nothing wrong with that, and it's a constant reminder that I'm not alone, even when I feel vulnerable. Sometimes independence doesn't mean being alone. Sometimes it means surrounding yourself with the people who truly support you. One of the biggest changes I've experienced has been how I spend time with my daughter. When I was stuck in that overwhelming routine with my husband, I felt like I never had quality time with her. Now, every moment I spend with her feels more meaningful. We've started doing activities together that I really enjoy: walks in the park, reading books before bed, even cooking together in the kitchen. It's not just that I now have more time for her, it's that I have a new perspective on motherhood. I've learned to enjoy the simple, everyday things. Sometimes it's the small moments that really matter, and that's something I've rediscovered. I'm not going to lie, being a single mom isn't easy, but it also has its rewards. I'm learning to manage my time and emotions better, and even though some nights are tough, I always find a reason to smile when I see my daughter sleeping peacefully. She is the constant motivation that gives me the strength to keep moving forward. I've also started focusing more on myself. After years of putting everyone else first, I'm finally learning to prioritize myself. I began exercising regularly, something I had let slide a long time ago. Going for walks in the morning has given me a breath of fresh air, a space to reflect and disconnect. I've also picked up some of my old hobbies like reading and writing, things I used to enjoy before all of this consumed me. I'm taking the time to do things that make me happy, and while it's not always easy to find that balance, Each day, I feel like I'm getting closer to the woman I want to be. Of course, there are still moments of doubt. Sometimes I question whether I'm making the right decisions or if this is really what I want for myself and my daughter. But every time I feel insecure, I remember why I made that decision. Because I deserve to live in an environment where I'm valued, where I'm respected, and where I can grow. We deserve a home full of love and peace, not a constant emotional struggle. And even though I know there's still much to be done, I'm no longer afraid to face whatever comes next. Recently, I took the step of speaking with a lawyer to start formalizing the separation. Even though I'm taking concrete steps, I'm still prioritizing my daughter's well being. Shared custody is still something I'm working on, and although my husband hasn't fully accepted it, I'm willing to fight for what's best for her. I don't want her to grow up in a toxic environment, but I also don't want her to lose her relationship with her father. I'm determined to find a balance that works for her. I feel stronger every day. It's not that everything has been easy, because it hasn't, but I definitely feel more capable of handling the difficulties that arise. Your support has been a constant source of motivation. Every message, every piece of advice has helped me understand my worth and reminded me that I deserve to be happy. I've learned many lessons during this process. One of the most important ones is that independence doesn't mean loneliness. Learning to be alone isn't a punishment, it's an opportunity to find myself, to grow, and to become stronger. I've also learned that we can't control others, but we can control how we react to them and how we manage our own lives. Update 4, it feels a bit surreal to write this last update after everything I've been through in the past few months. I've wanted to share this with all of you who have been with me from the beginning because I feel that my journey wouldn't have been the same without your constant support. Not only did you help me make decisions, but you also gave me the strength to face reality in a way I never thought was possible. So, for all of that, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Let's get to the point. After 3 months of separation, I finally made the decision to file for divorce. I know many of you were expecting this, and honestly, I feel relieved to be able to say it out loud finally. Sometimes you feel trapped in a situation even when you know the best decision is to move forward. The truth is, the separation process wasn't easy. Although we had been living apart, the conversations were still tense. My husband tried several times to get close, to find ways to fix what we had. He brought more flowers, more promises, more excuses, but deep down, I knew none of that was going to change what I felt. I no longer wanted to be in that relationship. During that time, I realized just how exhausted I felt, not only from the emotional burden, but also from the constant pressure of trying to save something that was never truly healthy. There were moments of doubt, fear, and of course, sadness. But there were also moments of clarity when I realized that the only thing keeping me tied to that relationship was the fear of change. And as I learned throughout this process, the fear of change cannot be what controls our lives. Not when we have the opportunity to start fresh and seek something better for ourselves and especially for our children. My husband, of course, didn't sit idly by. In the first few days after I informed him of my decision, he tried to convince me that we could do things differently. He talked about couples therapy, taking a break, changing himself, but it wasn't enough. Those words no longer held weight for me. I had given too many chances, and I always ended up with the same feeling of emptiness and frustration. He didn't understand, or didn't want to understand, that what I truly needed was for him to commit to change, not just to say what he thought I wanted to hear. And by that point, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. So, I filed for divorce, and although, as I mentioned earlier, it was an emotionally difficult process, it was also an immense relief. I was finally able to release something that had been draining me from the inside. My husband, after a final attempt to ask me to reconsider, accepted. There were tears, there were arguments, but in the end, he understood there was no turning back. The divorce was the best thing for both of us. The most liberating part of all of this, and what I want to share with you, is the sense of peace I finally experienced. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my own life, no longer trapped in the destructive routine of a relationship that was doing me more harm than good. And not only that, but I also felt like I was making a decision for the good of my daughter, to show her that relationships shouldn't be battlefields, but places where respect, love, and equality are the most important things. I'm not gonna lie, the separation wasn't easy for our daughter. It's a complicated transition for any child, and it broke my heart to see her sadness. But I also saw how, little by little, she began to adapt to our new reality. She no longer saw the tension in the air, no longer saw her mom emotionally drained or her dad completely absent. Seeing her happy and peaceful again has been one of the greatest rewards of this decision. I'm also learning to enjoy my time with her, without having to worry about the constant emotional burden that came with the relationship. Now, as I write this, I feel like I've taken the most important step towards a fuller life. It's not easy, not everything is resolved overnight, but I can say with complete sincerity that I am in a much better place than before. I feel stronger, more confident in myself, and most importantly, more connected to my daughter. The future looks much brighter now that I have control of my life again. And finally, I want to thank all of you once again, my incredible followers and readers. Each of your comments gave me the strength to keep going when things seemed too hard. You've reminded me of the importance of listening to ourselves and never letting fear paralyze us. My story is simply a reminder that even when it feels like we're trapped in a relationship that consumes us, there is always a path to freedom, to a better life. If there's one thing I want you to take away from all of this, it's that we should never settle for less than we deserve. Love and respect are the foundation of any relationship. And if that's not present, then it's not worth fighting for something that only harms us. Thank you once again, and I hope my story has helped someone else, whether to make a decision, find strength, or simply remember that we can always start over.